You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, it's Paul Stefan, and we're here tonight breaking new ground. It's the first time we've had a musician on our show, and we hope to soon have a musical show where we go out to gigs and introduce the world to some bands that not enough people know, but they should. And one of those is our guest tonight. She is a musician of both keyboards and guitar, and also composes songs, and is a businesswoman. And that is Athena Hiotis. Welcome, Athena.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here. Now, you just did have a gig Saturday night.
I
right?
did, yes, at the Metro Gallery.
Okay, great. And this was with the group Rev.
Yes.
And you've been involved, or we have here, I thought there were currently 4 groups, which is the Queens of Noise, Rev, Steep Steps, and the Circuit Villains.
Circuit Villains, yeah. I'm involved in many projects, but really only 2 of them are active bands. Mm-hmm. That's Rev and Circuit Villains. Mm-hmm. Steep Steps is a production duo between myself and Tony Corelli, who is a local engineer. We specifically work with darker, trippier electronic music.
Right.
And then the Queens of Noise it's a Runaways tribute band, and just a bunch of friends of mine and I got together and maybe once or twice a year just paid tribute to one of the best all-girl rock bands of the 70s and just party.
Well, that's terrific. So people should mostly, when they look for you, look for Rev.
Yep.
And the Circuit Villains.
Yeah, Circuit Villains, yeah.
Have they had gigs yet, the Circuit Villains?
Circuit Villains,
new.
we are less than a week new. So
okay, no gigs yet.
Newly borns. Currently writing and planning our attack. Probably in the fall.
Okay.
We'll make some decisions about shows, but that's a fun one. It's a fun little project.
To help people understand then these 2 main projects of yours,
Sure.
say what genre the music is of Rev and what will be the genre of the Circuit Villains.
So Circuit Villains is, we like to refer to it as unapologetically groovy. Like there's a groove rock to it, it gets your hips moving. Mm-hmm. For fans of Royal Blood, Muse, Queens of the Stone Age, St. Vincent. Rev is cinematic indie art rock. So for fans of Radiohead, Muse, genres like that. I mean, with Rev, it's a little bit more dipping into the composition realm because there are classical elements. If we drew the Venn diagram of the 2 bands, they would meet. There would be just a little sliver in the middle. But for me, they're like a Jekyll and Hyde. Okay. Very, very interesting, complementary projects that have now made me feel more balanced of a writer as far as rock is concerned. So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. And are they totally different personnel besides you? You're the one common factor? Or?
I am the one common denominator. Yes. But yeah. I with Rev, it's myself, Nicholas Cosmas, who's a multi-instrumentalist, plays bass in the band. Sharif Taher is a jazz drummer, and then we have Scott Griffith come in. On guitar. And then, of course, we pull in different instruments. If we need a violinist or a cellist, we know a lot of people that do that. With Circuit Villains, it's Sam Brewer on drums and Stephen Thomas on guitar. And then, one very special, awesome someone will be dropping in on bass. We have to figure that out.
Oh, okay. But I did see, I saw a Rev video where you were like co-singing with a woman who was out front too, and she was, I think, playing guitar, and she had blue hair or something, and it was like a
video.
I think it was supposed to be in the living room or something.
Yes. So
the video was in the living room.
Yes. The Last Year is a band from Baltimore. They're excellent. Check them out. Mm-hmm. They, for a while, did a series, I believe for about a year or so, where they brought in different musicians and they covered a song.
Oh.
And so Nikki had us in to do a Fiona Apple song. So that was a lot of fun.
That was what it was.
Yes, yes.
Now, see, I jogged your memory on that one. Now, here's a thing for you. I know I saw something that said you sat down at a piano at 11 months old.
Yeah.
But where did your love of music come from?
I don't mean to cheat the answer, but I don't remember a time where I discovered my love of music. I feel like it's kind of like my arm. I was always born with it. So I don't really know life without it. Like I said, can pinpoint parts of my early childhood where, at 11 months, my parents have videos of me playing piano,
Right.
and at a very early age, I was playing along with songs, and I've always loved music.
And you were influenced, weren't you, at home? But I understand you said something about Dad was a rocker?
Dad was a rocker. Dad is also a multi-instrumentalist. He's
Okay.
the reason I picked up a guitar. There's actually a picture of me as a baby strumming on the guitar, and he was teaching me the chords.
Wow.
But my parents were very supportive. I'm very fortunate to have that. They bought me a small play school keyboard super young, and have always had it in my life.
But you weren't one of those, what was it, Suzuki method type musicians or anything?
I learned both by ear and by going to school for it. So I advocate both very equally. I was very fortunate to be able to go to school for music. And so I feel like there's an importance to education and exercising one's ability to listen.
So you're not somebody who says, hey, I just play by ear, or I picked it up, or, you were trained.
No. I mean, I picked it up, but it was nurtured. I was lucky to go to school for it. My high school was an art school, and I went to University of Maryland College Park for music.
Right. And part of that, I understand, was voice that you had at the University of Maryland.
Yes.
So that's, again, just your singing is not just your gift. It got cultivated somewhat.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, for you then, growing up, you're exposed maybe to different kinds of music. Are there certain genres that you really like, or, or things like, that type of music?
Sure.
What kind of genres are you interested in or have been interested in?
Well, I've always loved pop music.
Okay.
That's sort of the unpopular answer. I feel like I'm shunned as a rocker. I love pop music. It's taught me to write a good melody. It's taught me about simplicity in the parts. That it's actually very much like arranging an orchestration. You don't just have one block of sounds, that just create this wall of sound. You have different melodies and counterpoints, and very. Should I
Keep going.
keep going? All right, cool. Pop music has taught me a lot about being able to take the little pieces of the puzzle and to create a wall of sound from that, which again also is very much like orchestration and working in a classical setting. I grew up listening to classical music, so I feel like those two went hand in hand. But my dad, he used to play the Police for me all the time.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, the Police, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. So there's definitely a rock influence there. As far as non-mainstream influences, I love Middle Eastern and Mediterranean music.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, they really do tap into different modes and scales, but the unconventional usage of, unconventional instruments and the unconventional usage of conventional instruments, either because there's a lack of excess or access in those particular countries, or obviously because they have a whole different cultural makeup, is really interesting to me. To be able to question, okay, so I pluck the guitar this way, but when you play the oud, maybe you pluck it a different way. Maybe you're not using your wrist in a certain way. I feel like it just allows you to expand your palette. And the reason why I'm such an advocate about education, whether formal or just listening to another country's music, is you really do expand your arsenal. Your armory just becomes more and more filled with different things. And you start implementing that, and rock isn't just rock. Rock is now something else, something that's harder to explain, but it stands out. So yeah, there's your long answer.
Well, it's okay. I like the long answers. That to me, then rock has evolved in the. I think from what you're telling me, sort of the way I also see jazz. You can say jazz, but jazz means a million different things.
Of course.
And,
Oh yeah.
And so does rock. You can say, oh, is it acid rock? Is it alt rock? Is it art rock?
Oh
Is
yeah.
it all
And what
kinds
is
of
art rock?
all of that, so that, and you like to be, have you experimented then with these different stringed instruments you're talking about from other countries, like the oud or the bouzouki or, the balalaika? Or,
We actually did use the bouzouki in our song Orpheus.
Oh, you did?
Rev's song Orpheus, which
Right.
is in on La Marionette.
Right.
And that was awesome. I hope to do more of that. We've been talking about challenging ourselves at some point and going to, I mean, the ideal situation would be to go to these countries, but to be able to open ourselves up to musical aspects of countries that we don't really interact with on the day-to-day, and then see what we can learn and borrow and implement into a song. And that's our song to them. It's a great, it's a challenge, but I think, well, not I think, it would be extremely rewarding.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the fusion, in a sense, of different cultures and expressing it in rock, I guess, is the way to put it. Because I noticed, you were talking about harkening back, what comes to me is the Beatles would do that. I mean, remember the thing they did? They had the sitar, and, and they'd have the symphony stuff in Norwegian wood and all that kind of stuff. So they used a lot of other different instruments, not necessarily ethnic all the time.
Absolutely, sure.
But, say that, but the fact that you wanted it, I think it'd be a little harder to compose because of, the different, they use different time signatures and everything else.
Absolutely. I mean, time signatures and then also different aspects and approaches to pitch. I mean, you look at a piano, you have, 12 notes in a scale to choose. You have C and C sharp, but yet you take a stringed instrument, and then you don't just have C and C sharp. You have all those little cents in between because you're dealing with a fretless board. But then you have instruments like the oud, where there are pitches within the pitches that we would recognize as Western listeners.
Okay.
So that would be really interesting.
A challenge, maybe?
A challenge for sure, especially when you're dealing with the piano. Yeah.
And also, I mean, influenced because of your heritage, I guess some Greek music would
absolutely.
be.
Oh, yeah. My bassist and I are Nick and I are Greek, so we.
Okay.
It's been a wild ride to be able to borrow things.
Well, I bet it has. Now I'm trying to think where I want to go with it. Now, as far as when did you decide that you wanted to be a musician? Your whole life again?
I think. Well, I was in 10th grade when I realized that music was something that I wanted to do more than writing in my room, which is where at the very core of it, I love writing. And if that's all I had, then that would be fine. But going to the art school that I went to exposed me to performance and collaboration, and I just fell in love with it. It was an addiction. So I would say around college when I started playing out, first bands and everything like that, and just kind of seeing how people were reacting to it, that was like, this is something.
Now, one of the things too I wanted to bring up, it seems like, bring up pop rock.
Pop Riot.
Pop Riot, I mean, that your company, in the sense, you talk about the music business and the business of music. And you even, gave a talk at the Carroll County Community College about that. Now, why don't you expand or tell us a little bit about your sense of, because I would say, let me just set it up, is to say that most musicians, at least in the old days, when they signed contracts, and they would get nothing, and the label would get everything. And unless, of course, you were the songwriter.
Yes.
And but a lot of time the acts didn't. I mean, even Elvis was stole from. So I'm just saying that, tell us a little bit about your company and what you have to say about the business of music and helping musicians understand that it's not a them us kind of thing.
Yeah, I could go on forever talking about.
Well, take your time.
People tend to idolize the decades of the 70s, 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s. And there were probably those were probably some of the most detrimental decades to musicians because you had such a limited number of opportunities and roads. You had a very finite number of labels that owned pretty much everything. I mean, again, this is before the internet, before any access was brought to us. So you pretty much had to sign this contract, which at that time, they would take away your songwriting credits, which they knew songwriting is the most important thing. We live in a time today where you are able to do anything you want if you plan accordingly and you invest accordingly. Somewhere along the way, musicians learned, were taught, evolved, I'm not sure, to think that the business aspect is not rock and roll or too much to understand or not meant for them. And so me going out and teaching them about the industry, about the fundamentals, is really to give them an understanding that they can make anything happen. That if you walk into a situation where you have signed over credits that you shouldn't have, in today's day and age, it's your fault. The label is not out to get you. There are sharks out there like there would be in any field. But again, we live in a time where you can take your time, do your research. Attorneys aren't that expensive that you can't have them review a contract. And so my goal is to give musicians a fighting chance, starting with education. Even if your goal is to get signed or to find, an agent, which is something that everyone should do, you have to know what you're looking for and you have to know how it works before you start interviewing people for the position. Pop Riot for me is an expression of that. It's my label. It's a label that we started to provide an outlet that's affordable, not just financially, but also having to do with knowledge, having to do with education. So these lecture series that I give are just that. I mean, I believe we always do them free of charge. However, there have been instances where we worked with art centers where the money will go to the art center.
Right.
But I just want bands to be smarter, to not accept the status quo. That I've been looked at many times with that glossy-eyed look of, you want to be a musician? Ugh. And it's just like, I don't accept that. I don't accept that response, and neither should anyone else. But with that, I believe that we need to start with the fundamentals. And when we say things like, I want to sign to a label, what does that mean? And I do one-on-one consultations with bands all the time, and the first thing I'll ask them is, what is your goal? And they can't even articulate it for a multitude of reasons. They're afraid of the word fame, which you shouldn't be, because fame is only the fact that a lot of people know who you are. That's it. That's all that fame is. It's not a bad word. Don't let anyone tell you that it's a bad word. To not managing financials, there are ways that bands could prepare. Like I said, I can go on forever, but I'm very passionate about giving musicians the tools to pretty much say, this is what I want, this is how we're going to get it. Do you want to help us? And to be able to know how to ask for that.
Well, I know part of it, with the music scene has changed, especially since the internet, to say that, a lot of people do self-produce their own music. They do it in their home studio, throw it up on the internet, that kind of thing, and sometimes they get thousands, of hits.
Oh, yeah.
But then you have to be able to get whatever, your percentages, if it's Spotify or wherever, get your money. But, it's different if you sign. And because that's what I was going to ask about you. I'll go along with that, how it seems like you consult with people who say, individuals or groups that want to, become musicians or be a band, and how they get themselves out there, because there's a lot to it. You talk about signing, but there are things like publicity.
Oh, yeah.
Landing gigs. How do you get known? Do I have an agent? Do I not have an agent?
Yeah. Do
I do a video and, farm it all around, or, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there is so much out there, and there are so many ways to do anything, that it gets a bit overwhelming. And what I tell people is you must identify your goals and you must identify your parameters. If you wanted to come over to my house, you would need an address, or else you'd be driving senselessly and burning up resources.
Right.
So if a band can't even say, I want to be able to sell out venues that have a 2,000 capacity limit. I want to be able to do a world tour. I want to sign to this, booking agent so that I can open up for. We're talking specific goals, and it's very difficult for people. It was difficult for me to be able to say I want to do X, Y, and Z. But also, when you identify your goals, what are you willing and not willing to do in order to get there? No one in Rev is highly social media. We don't like it. It needs to be calculated, and there you go. That's our parameter. We are not the people that post something every day. So what does that mean? Okay, cool. So if you don't want to post something every day, well then you need to make sure that you plan out your posts and that you boost them a little bit so that you are gaining that visibility and that reach another way. There's an answer and a way for everything, but there must be the willingness to accept the fact that if you have a goal and you have these parameters set, then you might need to drive a little bit longer. Like if you want to come over to my place, but you don't want to go over the bridge, there's a way. You might add it on about 30 minutes.
Right.
And I just want bands to know it's not that hard. It's tough, but it's not hard.
Now, speaking of that, and bring it home to you, what are your goals musically?
I am a big fan of St. Vincent.
Okay.
Right now, she has been touring for about a year and a half on her album, Mass Seduction, and she is touring the world. Mm-hmm. I would love to reach that level, that ability to put out an album and to be able to play the anthem or the Queen in Delaware and to be able to go to Europe and to have dedicated fans that come out. Mm-hmm. Would everyone know who I am? No, and that's okay. We don't need everyone knowing who I am. But my goal is, as far as a performing aspect, for Rev and Circuit Villains to get that level of notoriety and access. Mm-hmm. I want to continue writing and composing for film, mm-hmm. and to continue helping bands, and hopefully at a much larger level.
Well, that's great. And part of what I want to bring up to is another aspect is the writing that you have done for short films and feature films. And to say, how do you find, as far as composing, how is it differently, say you're writing for the band, as opposed to that you're writing for a movie?
Absolutely.
Explain the differences there.
Well, when you're writing for the band, the song is the center point mm-hmm. of the entire delivery of the package. You're creating something and you're giving it to the audience, and if they like it, great. If they don't, well, oh well. When you're writing for film or you're writing to a motion picture, that's the centerpiece. Mm-hmm. And you can't take away from that. And there are certain aspects and certain writing styles that in and of themselves are very cinematic and powerful, but when they accompany motion picture, they're not as powerful because you have two headstrong components. So the first thing I do is I watch the clip and I write down what I feel. And of course, if the director has given any cues during the spotting session, that's important as well. But then I sit down and I come up with a melody. I always try to start with a melody and then build from there, and then play it together, watch it a few zillion times, and then I go off of emotion more than anything else. And then as far as orchestration, I scale it back to be a little bit more technical. So.
Now, in the work that you've done, have you done primarily like theme songs, or have you done a whole score for a movie?
I have done both. I've done scoring once, and it was kind of an unfortunate situation because the For some reason, the movie never got released,
Oh.
which was very upsetting.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah, but the experience was incredible, and I learned a lot. Mostly, I've done theme songs or songs to be used individually in a specific scene.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think I prefer the latter. I mean, the composition and the scoring, the entire film is amazing. But I think I always favor the more thematic segments than anything else.
Yeah, so either it's a song at the beginning of the movie, the end of the movie, or
Oh,
a
yeah.
scene in the middle.
Oh, they're powerful. They're just, that's powerful.
Well, that's smart because that's where usually they grab for singles.
Oh yeah. So many times I've watched, I've gone to see a movie and I'm like, Shazam, what is this? What is this?
Who did that
Yeah,
one,
who
right?
is this?
Now, with writing, for example, where do you get your ideas for songs?
I always like to hear drums first. I mean, are you talking lyrically or musically?
I'm asking you just to say, okay, where does I'm just going to leave it like that. The idea for a song, start there. And then I'll go to the next part, which maybe I'll give it to you now to help you.
Sure.
Part B would be, for you, what comes first,
Got it.
music or lyrics?
Okay, so the idea of a song for me is heavily influenced by any story that I want to tell, usually always reflecting some part of me. I base it off of mythology, whether classical mythology or I will use components of Joseph Campbell's writings or Alan Watts as sort of a translation, thought to paper. But for me, it's really emotional. If I'm writing songs that are dealing with a journey, it's probably mixed with a lot of anxiety or fear or restlessness or knowing that there's something more out there, which I'm sure everyone goes through and has gone through in their lives. I sort of am a slave to whatever comes out. I have a book that I carry. I'm kind of neurotic with books. I have a book for every project, but I have one book that I always carry around that's my stream of consciousness.
Oh, okay.
Pen to paper. Sometimes it's impossible to decipher what I've written, but whatever I feel is getting written down. So part A would be, as far as ideas, whatever comes out. Okay. Whatever needs to come out will come out.
And it'll be mostly an emotion or a gut feeling.
Yes, absolutely. Gut feeling. And how it's represented, that's the fun part,
Okay.
Drawing the pictures after you've laid the dots out.
Okay.
As far as musically, lyrics will always be sort of written by themselves, but I solidify the lyrics after the music's done.
So the music really starts for you.
That's just, you want to get the waterfall just completely rushing, just the music first. Because you take a chord, you can play like C, G, and you can go anywhere with that. Well, you start adding drums and you start adding a bass line. I mean, there are so many times in these projects where we're together and an idea comes to the table in one way, drummer starts changing some stuff. Any idea that I may have had before is gone now. Because it's like, now you've got a different groove. Okay. And now the bassist is playing something maybe a little bit, it's got a little bit of a kick in the backbeat instead of being so heavy in the forefront. So yeah, I would say music first.
But it sounds like you're even composing with the band, sort of.
Yeah,
you kind of give them some chords or give them an idea, maybe a few lines of music, and then it starts going off, and they kind of contribute. Oh, now let me write that down. Let me get that in there.
Oh, it's the best. I used to
It's collaborative.
It is collaborative. I used to be the complete opposite with music. I wanted to write everything, and I was such a control freak. But then you just feel the energy, and you just feel how these songs have been taken to another level, to another realm. And that only happens when you collaborate. I mean, the best songwriters, the best composers in the world, there will eventually be a redundancy in the theme. I mean, Hans Zimmer is one of my favorite composers, modern-day composers. Even his themes tend to, you can kind of listen to it and go, oh, yeah, that's Hans Zimmer. So in my opinion, anytime you take an idea and you bring someone else, you're getting every little idiosyncrasy, any tendency that they have. You're making a baby. You're making something very unique and special. So now I'm kind of addicted to it.
So as it is like you do write the lyrics and the music yourself. You don't say there's circumstances where you just wrote the music and somebody else wrote the lyrics, or you don't do those kind of songwriting collaborations, do you?
I have, but they're probably no, they're not. They're not for like my main projects. I've done that for other artists, but no, for main projects, if there's an idea, bring it to the table, and then, oh, hey, what do you guys think about this? What do you guys? I mean, even if I've written most of the lyrics, I'll always kick it to everyone and go, hey, what do you think? And we have a song on La Marionette called Inheritance, and I brought in the second verse to Nick, our bassist, and he literally just flipped 2 words.
Oh, okay.
And it changed the entire song, and it just made it. I mean, he wrote more than those 2 words, but just what he saw in what I brought and what he was able to do with it, I mean, that's the lines make the song.
Well, that's great. I thought maybe part of the reasons why you have Pop Riot is it allows you to keep control of your own music.
That is a reason, yeah. Pop Riot is my label. It protects the members in the bands. It protects the music. I mean, of course, if there's an opportunity that comes along in the future, we'll obviously consider it as objectively as we can. But right now, we have an opportunity to be able to work professionally and efficiently and not worry about the intentions of those that are helping us. So,
I mean, are you also had any thoughts or had projects where you were the songwriter for hire? I mean, say, well, we need a song, so Athena, would you write it for us?
I have done that. I have done that. I worked with pop artist Erica Ashley a few years ago, and I worked with pop country artist Emily Kern before she went off to college. So that was a very, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling, wrote the songs, and then
Terrific.
It was cool. It was very cool. I love that.
Okay. And now, if you could tell us and tell our audience what's maybe coming down the line here this summer, where people might be able to see you or see your group.
Sure.
Let us know.
Absolutely. So if you are interested in keeping up with me and the bands that I'm in, you can check out officialrev.com. It's officialreve.com. We will list all of our show dates there. Circuitvillains.com. That will be, that's a brand new project. Very excited about that. You'll be seeing new information there in the next coming, I would say, weeks or so. Steep Steps, always doing a lot of songwriting and production there. If you're into dark, electronic, glitchy music, that would be steepsteps.net. And AthenaHiotis.com. You can always check it out and drop me a line if you'd like.
That's terrific. And also, I want to wish you an early happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you so
much.
much.
The 19th.
The 19th. Yes.
It's coming up. And I don't know if you're having a blast for it or not.
Oh, I love getting older.
You do?
I do, yeah. I love it.
Because some people don't.
No. Every crow's feet that pops up, I get happier.
Oh, well, hey, you're comfortable with it. There you go. That's good.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't do it right now, but when we do come back, we're going to have you play something for us and
Absolutely.
give our audience a treat. So we'll be right back with that in a minute. We're not ready to say goodbye to Athena just yet.
Cool.
I had so much more.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.